All right, this is the first in a series of videos I'm going to do on mistakes that we've made as agencies, as consultants, as me as a freelancer when I was solo, because we've made a lot of them. So the first one is a big one, and that is that as a marketing agency or as consultants, and frankly, as any company in any service business, you are service first, you are your job second. So we are service first. We are a service company primarily. We are a marketing company second, right? It's a subtle shift in thinking, but what it does is I think back to like, if you've ever stayed at the Four Seasons, it's worth doing in spite of how much it costs, just to see how good they are at service. So if you stay at the Four Seasons and you forgot a toothbrush, they'll send somebody to give you a toothbrush. Simple, right? That's pretty standard in a hotel. If you want milk and they don't have milk, they'll send a bellman out to go get you milk, right? And they might not even charge you for it. They will try to accommodate any request that you have, even if it costs a lot of money. Maybe they'll work something out with you, but they'll pretty much try to accommodate you no matter what you have, no matter what problem you have, no matter what request you have. They'll try to accommodate you. That is service. That is the epitome of service, right? And so as a marketer, I often thought way early on that my role was almost like a peer to the clients, where clients called us, they were looking to us for expertise, and they were expecting us to tell them if something was a good idea or a bad idea, and that we were sort of on equal footing in a way. Obviously being respectful and keeping in mind that they're the client, but they were looking at us almost as peers. That is not the case. It can be the case. And this is a subtle little shift in thinking that really just totally changed my business. And that is that, yes, some clients, that is their goal, but not all clients, right? And that's not even possible for all clients, right? So as a marketer, I don't necessarily know all the politics going on in our clients' businesses. We don't know the legal issues and legal ramifications of a lot of this stuff. So what I realized a while back, somebody actually told me this who worked with bigger clients. She told me, she said, your job is to make recommendations. It's not to actually get stuff done. And all along I was thinking, all right, my job is to actually get stuff done. Like, here's what we should do. If the client says, let's put primary colors all over our website and make it look like a third grader drew it. My job was to push back a little bit and say, hey, I'm not sure that's a great idea. You're a business, you're B2B or something like that. Like, primary colors are not the color scheme you want to go with. What I realized pretty soon after that, after she gave me that advice, was that my job is just to gently make recommendations to the client. And the client may or may not want to take those recommendations, and they may or may not be able to take those recommendations. And my job is to figure out what the client wants and give them that. So some clients I had a client one time back when we were designing websites that literally drew a website in Photoshop and modified the design that we were creating and sent it back. And it was like all primary colors. I mean, it was an abomination. It was disastrous. And I looked at it, and that was my response. I was like, oh man, this is horrible. Like, how do I say that to the client? And then I realized, look, this client's drawing the damn website themselves. They don't want me to push back. This is what they like. They sent this over. This is what they like. So let's support them as best we can and get that out the door the way they like it, because this is what they want. And so in the service business, it's a subtle shift. If I was a marketing business primarily, my job would have been to push back on that client. Say, hey, this probably isn't going to get you the results we're going for. Maybe you should tweak this. Maybe you should do this. If I'm thinking about it as being in the service business first, my job is to first figure out what is the client's need here, right? Is it for me to push back? Are they looking for me to say that's not a great idea? Or are they really just running with this and they just want my support, right? It's a subtle shift, but very, very important. If you can figure out what the client wants, and you often can, it's often not that hard. You can read it just by their behavior. I mean, if a client's designing a website on their own, if they're taking your design and putting it in Photoshop and adding gradients and colors and all this kind of stuff, and then they send it back to you and say, I like this. That's what they want. So give it to them, right? So what I realize is our job is more like it's a service business. Another way to think about it is as if you were like an attorney for a client, right? Let's say you're like a criminal attorney, and your job as an attorney is to advise your client on the best route possible. But at the end of the day, you're there to support the client's decision, right? At the end of the day, the client's going to tell you what to do, and you're going to do it. That's the same thing, right? The same thing in almost any service business, honestly. Now, obviously, you have to operate like within the bounds of what's legal and stuff like that. But if a client wants something, our job, I realized, was to support that client in whatever that was. First, to figure out what that was exactly that they wanted, and then support them in whatever that was. So the ideal scenario for us is for a client to look back on the decision-making process, and whether things went well or didn't go well, they look back and they say, oh, okay, RLM gave us some guidance. They suggested XYZ. We went with a different option. In hindsight, maybe what they suggested was a better option. And if things go bad, that's the ideal outcome, because the worst outcome is for you to push back so hard that the client just feels like you're being difficult. And that's often what ends up happening. So in the service business, again, it's a subtle shift from thinking you're in the marketing business to thinking I'm in the service business first. And that is the lens through which you should make all your decisions. And some clients, that means some projects are going to go terribly, right? Because some clients aren't good at delegating. Some clients don't want pushback at all. They get offended by it. And that's fine. And the project might tank in a year. Everything might go to shit. And if it does, that's okay, because you know what that client's going to do? Not always, but if they end up being a good client later, they're going to look back and say, oh yeah, John told me to do this thing and I didn't do it, and look at the result now. And that's the ideal scenario from that. So you want the client to feel supported later on, and that subtle shift into being a service business first and whatever you're doing second is so crucial. And it's also something, working with a ton of contractors, and a lot of people don't understand that. I think if you're in a service business, to get past a certain level, you have to learn that. You just have to realize that. Because otherwise you'll get fired. Clients will fire you for pushing back and stuff like that, even if you're gentle about it. So you have to get to a certain size. But freelancers, individual contractors that we work with, they very often don't realize that. If you're an attorney, if you're an accountant, attorneys usually realize this because they've sort of gone through a lot of training on this type of thing, I think. But if you're an accountant, if you're a designer, whatever it is, remember that your job is to figure out what the client wants. Now, sometimes they may want to delegate everything to you, right? And if that's the case, well, great. Then they're saying, hey, delegate, tell me what to do. Let's just do whatever you think. That's one extreme. The other extreme is the client wants to draw the damn website themselves. Usually you're going to be somewhere in the middle where the client has, legal restrictions, or, they have a vision of what the brand is. And so your job is to just say, hey, I think we should do this, and gently nudge in that direction, and then figure out what the client wants, and enact that, right? And support that client in whatever they want to do. And that will make a huge impact. That's really that one idea completely changed my business. We had projects that we were like rocking, just killing it. We had a project that, this is back when I was solo. I had a project that I passed on to a colleague in the industry because I was too busy at the time, and I passed it on to him. And about 6 months into the project, he emailed me or called me or something, and he's like, I've been doing this for like 10 years. I've never seen results like this in my life, ever. And you know what? That client almost fired me multiple times. And it's because I didn't realize this. I had a project that was like, it was still to this day, it was one of the most wildly successful projects, SEO projects I've ever run. And the client was upset and almost firing me almost every day. Like every call, every month we would have a call, and he just wasn't super excited. And I'm like, what am I doing wrong? And then my friend told me that concept that, hey, your job's to make recommendations. And then I was like, man, and I got this service industry first concept, and I was like, shit, that's what I'm doing wrong. I think I'm on the same level as the client, but my job is to enact the client's vision, whatever that is. That may be do exactly what they say, and that's it. Or it may be the other extreme, to just do what we think we should do. And likely it's going to be somewhere in the middle of that. And that's our job. So remember that if you're a contractor, if you're a freelancer, if you're trying to build a marketing agency, you're in service business first. You are in the marketing business second. See ya.